I just had a quick lunch, yes.
Oh, okay. All right, so I'm going to be presenting my draft.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see my draft?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Just to update you, Doctor, my topic is going to be my topic for the video essay is going to be the evolution of KS Maniam's writing on the representations of female protagonist characters. As for the introduction part, I'm going to talk about how the portrayal of female characters in Malaysian literature has evolved throughout the years, from being constrained to a stereotype to being liberated to an image of empowerment, and also how literature is a reflection of society. The changing role of women in literature from the past to present indicates the evolution of women and women empowerment. And I'm also going to relate it to how this shift can also be seen through Maniam's writing. Okay, for this topic, I'm going to show the evolution of K.S. Maniam's writing by comparing two short stories by him, which are Mala and The Cling Cling Woman. These are the 5 journal articles that are relevant to the topic. Diaspora and women against on KS Maniam's female characters, the representation of female psychic individuality in KS Maniam's Mala, in Gendered Chambers, the figure of the Indian immigrant woman of colonial Malaya, the angry, abusive and controlling man in KS Maniam's short story Mala, and lastly, gender, modernity and the nation in Malaysian literature and film, comprising from 1980 to 1990s. Okay, Doctor, I have a question for this part.
Yeah.
For identifying the key patterns, I'll have to come up, just to double confirm, I have to come up with my own subheadings, right? And then I'll quote these articles under those subheadings.
Yes.
Okay.
So when you say you will identify key patterns based on these 5 articles, what are some of the key patterns that you have identified so far?
I'm going to talk about how there's a comparison between the two main protagonists from those two short stories and how they differ in terms of their decisions. Yeah, basically their characteristics and how.
Don't Yeah, don't make it specific to a particular short story.
Okay.
Rather, broaden the scope slightly to the writer in question.
Okay.
Even though both texts are written by the same writer, you don't want to narrow the discussion to Mala and Kling Kling Woman specifically. You want to be able to say that these statements that you are saying about the portrayal of female protagonists in Maniam's narratives appear reflective on other stories as well, as seen by other scholars. That means maybe there was another scholar who looked at Maniam's female characters in his plays. Maybe there was another scholar who looked at Maniam's female characters in Between Lives or in his other novel, In a Far Country. So by narrowing down to a particular story or stories, you're narrowing your scope unnecessarily. Keeping in mind you are not writing on these two stories for your analysis. You are doing a review on this particular writer. So that being the case, your findings, your literature review findings, if you like, uh, should be broader than how these two characters are described in their stories.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
Should
Okay.
focus on Maniam's narrative styles when it comes to female characters. For
Oh,
instance, does he give them names? Does he allow them to speak for themselves? Does he show them in empowered positions, or does he present them in kind of a victim role, voiceless, nameless, right?
Oh, okay.
So again, you can't generalize. So the fact that Mala is a character who is the character of the story, and the title of the story is her name. Then you have another woman. The woman is known by the anklet that she wears,
Yeah.
the Kling Kling woman, right? So we don't even know her name. So she's nameless, but labeled by the object that is attached to her ankle. That you have other women characters in Manyam's stories, and they represent a kind of a spectrum of representation, female representation, right? So if you do it in a broader scope, you get to bring in other scholars' work, and you don't need to review each paper in detail,
Oh, okay.
right? So you don't need to review representation of female psychic individuality by Hilala in detail. Every single thing that Hilala discovered, you review. No, you just want to look at how female individuality is represented in Manyam's narrative. Basically, look at the conclusion. What has she concluded in that paper? What was the key conclusions that she drew from reading Mala as a case study?
Mm.
Right.
Okay.
Same with Nur Hafiza Ali et al. What have they discovered about how female identity is portrayed in Mala by looking at the male characters' controlling ways? Okay.
Mm.
Does that mean that the female characters then become voiceless because the male characters become too controlling? Does that then make the male characters rule and have this upper hand over the female characters? So, so what I'm suggesting is your review shouldn't be too detailed to particular stories and the way each stories are developed and each characters are expanded. It should be on the writer, back to what the writer is doing or not doing,
Oh, okay.
vis-a-vis the topic you have identified, which is representation of the female characters.
Mm.
Okay, so one more thing about the opening paragraph. If you could go to your opening paragraph, those paragraphs need to be referenced as well.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
when you say portrayal of female characters in MLE, Malaysian Literature and English, has evolved, which journals are you referring to? Which articles are you referring to? And is this based on 20th century research, based on 21st century research? You need to kind of, you know, um, narrow the scope somewhat. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Let
Actually, doctor, the reason why I'm focusing on Mala and the Clingy Woman because I've read both of them.
Yeah.
But I'm scared if I do on like let's say KS My Name's Place, I haven't actually read the place, so I'm scared if like I can do.
No, but this is a review assignment, Elya. I'm not
Oh,
asking
okay.
you to do an original research on Mala and Kling Kling Woman. I'm
Mm.
asking you to review what previous scholars have said about Maniam's works, which means you have read The Return, you have read Mala and Kling Kling Woman now.
Yeah.
So you have a kind of an understanding of Maniam's female representation of female characters.
Mm.
Based on those based on those three stories, you will now read other researchers' works, on Maniam's representation of female characters. Then you will summarize that by looking at the kind of patterns emerging when it comes to K.S. Maniam and his female characters. So
Oh,
what
okay.
are like maybe 5 or 6 key patterns that scholars have identified? So if you go down to your the findings,
Yeah, actually, this is not relevant because you said that I can focus on just
Yeah, don't focus because the assignment is not asking for specific stories. The assignment is basically allowing you to use the stories to form general statements about either the canon, Maniam's canon, or on Maniam himself as a writer. So if you have this prepared, and if you chose to look at for your final project, if you chose to look at Maniam and maybe Between Lives, his final novel, or if you chose to look at male writers and representation of female characters, you can use part of this review that you've prepared for assignment one in your final project.
okay.
But if you focus primarily on Mala and the Kling Kling Woman, your literature review is too narrow.
Okay.
So I'm helping you avoid that trap. You want your literature review to be broad enough for you to be able to make conclusive statements about the writer and his writings,
Okay.
which means beyond these statements, there are other rich statements that you can make about Maniam's female characters. Right? But if you narrow it only to Mala and Kling Kling Woman, your review of literature seems very biased to these stories alone. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I see how it like my focus now is very narrow. Yeah, I see that. Okay, doctor. One more question. Do you prefer, like for the video essay, do you prefer me recording only my voice presenting the PowerPoint, or do you want me to show my face?
Say that again. For the video essay,
Yeah, do you prefer me just recording my voice presenting the PowerPoint slides, or
I'm
um
fine either way. It's
okay.
basically your choice. Some prefer to have their image in the video. Some do not. I leave it to you.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions?
No, I think that's all.
Okay, brilliant. This is good. This is good.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
doctor.
Yeah, I mean, you're in your first semester, but I think you're catching on very well. So
Yeah,
I'll
with the help
stop.
of my classmates.
They are helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Well done. God bless them.
Yeah.
Um, okay.